My name is Ray McGovern. I've worked for the CIA for 27 years, now retired. I was a Soviet specialist at first. My graduate degree is in Soviet studies. And then I had more responsible jobs in a worldwide kind of coverage nature, working for the President's Daily Brief, actually briefing that one-on-one with some of the President's senior advisors, and working as a chair of the National Intelligence Estimates, which are the supreme genre of analytical product, which the director of the National Intelligence now signs on the cover and presents to the President and the senior advisors. So I was on the substantive side of the agency as distinct from the operational side. No, it's a sort of a term of the trade. Actionable intelligence means intelligence that you can take action on. So if you would find where Osama bin Laden is and you have some assets in the area, you can take action right away and zap that site. Anything short of that is not actionable intelligence. In a very general sense, if you found a weapon of mass destruction and you knew where it was, that could become actionable intelligence if you had a cruise missile or something that you could put on that target. Well, I think we had appreciable success leading up to the 7th of November. I think if we hang in there, that is, we, the people who are after justice and peace, that we can cause these Democrats to get some spine, to realize that they're not in the minority anymore, that they can actually do some constructive things. And I have great hope that if we stay the course with them and really stick it to them, that we will make them realize that they need to get this country back on a constitutional basis. And the first thing they need to do, of course, is to rescind what I call the Enabling Act, because it's the same as what enabled Hitler to do the things he did in March of 1933. They have to rescind this euphemistically called Military Commissions Act, which allows the President to do just about anything he wants, including torture, and revoking 791 years of tradition, habeas corpus, which was wrested from the King of England by those barons back in 1215, wasn't it?
Magna Carta.
Yeah, right. Habeas corpus in Latin means you have the body, okay? And it's a provision in the law where no one can just scoop up someone, put them in a black hole, and keep them there without that person having the right to appeal to a court and say, you have the body, now what do you charge this person with, and what redress does he or she have? Now, that's basic human rights. I mean, that's First Amendment protections, the Bill of Rights protections. And to revoke that, you know, to revoke that is just something that I don't think any of us Americans ever expected a president would do, but he's done it. And it's there. And so we can't kind of make believe it isn't. When I leave this room, Don Rumsfeld could have a couple of his goons arrest me, put me in Gitmo, in a big black hole, not tell my wife or my children, or the Red Cross where I am, and I spend the rest of my days there being tortured. I kid you not. That's possible now. Not only the President, but Don Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, as long as he's Secretary of Defense. My friends say, why don't you hide in the cellar until his successor is approved, you know? But, you know, if we hide in the cellar, that's just going to be what they want us to do. I'm going to speak out. I think we all need to speak out, and we need to speak out boldly. Yeah. Well, I happen to be in Atlanta to make a speech on the evening of the day that Rumsfeld was speaking in the afternoon. And I learned from some friends in Atlanta that Rumsfeld was coming, so the first challenge was to get a ticket to a speech. There was nothing on the website of this prestigious organization to indicate that Rumsfeld was going to be anywhere nearby. So I had to use my tradecraft developed over 27 years, and who was it that got me the information I needed? The World Can't Wait. Very imaginative, forward-looking women. And they told me a website that I could get a ticket from quite legally. The only rub was it's going to cost me 40 bucks. Now, that was the most difficult decision in the whole thing. 40 bucks to hear Donald Rumsfeld? I mean, that was a stretch. I laid it out, credit card, and so I got there myself right next to one of the mics on the left there, and then prepared my speech. I had a whole bunch of documents. I was preparing my speech for the evening. And it turned out that those documents are related to Donald Rumsfeld, and when he got up and started saying, oh, my goodness, a lady had protested that he was a liar, that he was a war criminal, and she got carried out, and he did this little Rumsfeldian act and said, gosh, it's just so corrosive to the body politic and the government when someone accuses the president of lying, of misleading, of being a war criminal. We can't have that. We need the trust of the people in order to govern. And I'm saying to myself, oh my goodness, you know. And so I decided then and there that I needed to ask him a question if I had a chance. But then it was one of, you know, should I or should I not? You know, look at all these people. It was a very, very establishment audience. I thought maybe they'd lynch me. But then, you know what I said? I said, you know, if Cindy Sheehan or Ann Wright or Medea Benjamin was sitting here, I mean, they wouldn't be going, should I or shouldn't they? Be just asking the question, what kind of wuss are you, McGovern? You know? So I get up there and ask my questions. Now, I hadn't intended to, you know, accuse him of lying right off the bat, but I could see the MC was going to cut me off. He had already tried to cut me off once, and so I just said, you know, Mr. Rumsfeld, be up front with the American people. Tell us why you lied so that we'd get into this terrible situation with so many casualties. And then, of course, he danced around lots of the questions, but I quoted him back to himself. He forgot or denied what he had said previously. And the best news was that when I got out of that theater, CNN was on live TV, okay? And we were in Atlanta. So CNN's on the phone, and I get this call, Mr. McGovern, yeah? What are your sources for those 2 charges? So I go, oh, well, hang on for a second. I open my folder. It's the New York Times, September 27th, 2003, and George Stephanopoulos, March 30th, 2002. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. 5 minutes later, very, very officious woman gets on. Mr. McGovern, Paula wants you on her show. Now, I don't watch much television, but I know who Paula is, you know. But I didn't like the tone, so I said, Paula who? And she said, oh, Paula's on. I said, oh, does she have a radio talk show or something? She said, no, Paula's on, CNN. I said, oh, okay. Well, you know, so we've set that up. And then there was Anderson Cooper, then it was Wolf Blitzer, and a couple other people. The whole bunch, see? Oh, Tucker Carlson. Well, so anyhow, so that was my 4 minutes of fame, and I didn't seek it, but I was delighted to have it because he needed to be shown up as somebody who was not trustworthy, who would deny what he had said, and I was very relieved to see that what I had quoted him on was almost exactly word for word. Now, with respect to Gates, that's a difficult situation. You know, he benefits from the compared to what factor. I mean, compared to Rumsfeld, anybody's going to smell like a rose here. And we have to give him the benefit of the doubt as he takes this job. But his baggage, the baggage that he brings to this, is a whole history of cooking intelligence, of being less than candid on his role in Iran-Contra, or in his role on furnishing arms to Iraq. You know, there's a whole litany of things he was involved in, and his role in the first October surprise. You know, the one where the Republicans, right before the election there, when Ronald Reagan was running against Jimmy Carter, the Republicans went to the Iranians and said, look, don't release the hostages. Don't release those 52 hostages. Just let them stay there for another couple months, and then when Reagan comes in, then release them, and there'll be something in it for you, like maybe some arms and stuff like that. Unconscionable. Incredibly cynical. And Gates was part of that. And we have documentary evidence indicating that Gates was part. Now, that came out after his confirmation proceedings to become head of the CIA. So when Carl Levin says, you know, we have to look at what's happened in the interim, he's got to include that. Well, Norm Mineta was in the bunker with Cheney. And it was very curious what happened. He reported to the 9/11 Commission in the beginning that a young man came in and said, Mr. Vice President, only 30 miles out or 30 minutes out, something like that. And Same orders? And the vice president said, yeah, same orders. And he came back 2 times. Another time to say, only 10 miles out, or 10 minutes out, I forget which. Same orders? Yes. Now it's just 5 minutes out. Yes, same orders. And did I tell you different orders? 5 minutes later, something plows into the Pentagon, okay? Now, whether it was a plane or a missile, that's what happened. And Mineta testified, that's what happened. And so the fact that that wasn't in the 9/11 Commission report was rather odd, don't you think? Yeah. Who was that young man? Did anybody ask who that young man was? So there was a reading of the U.S. Constitution at Georgetown University. I was one of the ones who was privileged to read a couple of the amendments, and Mineta read a couple of the amendments after I did. And when I watched him do that, I said, you know, maybe I ought to try to intercept him. And there was the same thing, you know. Should I not? Well, Cindy Sheehan wouldn't have any problem. What kind of whistle are you going to go? So I go down to the 2nd floor, and here he comes out with his little escort, you know, a college girl. And I said, no, Secretary Mineta, it's so good to see you. You know, he's a politician. And I said, I'm Ray McGovern. Oh, yes, Ray. Yeah, how are you? You know, so he doesn't know me from Adam, see? So then I said, you know, Secretary Mineta, some of these, you know, these all kinds of theories going around about what went on in the bunker there. And we know your testimony. How do you explain what was going on? Who was that man that kept coming in? Did he have a uniform on? No, he was a civilian. I said, well, how do you figure, you know, what happened there? And he says, well, that plane in Pennsylvania, you know. I said, no, that was an hour later. The secretary, you already testified. This had to do with the one that hit the Pentagon. And so how do you, so, well, you know, that plane in Pennsylvania, we never figured. I said, no, it's not Pennsylvania. So either he's getting a little, I don't know, some senility in there, or maybe he's just, you know, real clever and keeping his mouth shut about that. But for 8 minutes of interrogation without any waterboarding or anything like that, I couldn't get anything out of him. And next thing I know, I'm landing in San Jose, California at the Norm Mineta Airport. And so I guess if you keep your mouth shut, they'll name an airport after you.
Well, he did resign.
Well, I think that the 9/11 Truth Movement is something to be applauded. That the reason that it's so necessary is that there are so many unanswered questions. And those questions are unanswered because this administration won't answer them. I mean, it's that simple, okay? Now, if they come through with the answers, there wouldn't be all these theories, but they don't, okay? Now, why don't they? Well, they have something to cover up, and the 9/11 Commission, of course, was a master cover-up. We know that. I mean, I can't believe Hamilton and Kane saying, oh, gosh, why didn't they tell us that George Tenet sort of took Condoleezza Rice on the 10th of July and said, you got to do something about this planes, you know? Why didn't they tell us? You know, there's a lot they didn't tell us. Gosh, you know? Well, give me a break, you know? So the 9/11 Commission was a cover-up. The question is what it was covering up. The charitable explanation is gross negligence, malfeasance, misfeasance, and what you call it, okay? Whether it was something more sinister, you know, am I prepared to believe that Dick Cheney would be capable of knowing about this kind of attack on the Pentagon, for example, and allowing it to happen? Well, from what I know about Dick Cheney, yeah, I'd be all too ready to believe that. If he can torture people and all that kind of stuff, you know, if he could publicly appeal for the right to torture, then he's probably capable of that. But I'm first and foremost an intelligence professional. I have to stick to the evidence as it pertains here. And I have to be careful not to let this kind of impression or my emotional reaction to this color my thinking on these facts. And I just haven't had the time that my good friend David Ray Griffin has had to look into this. I applaud his work. I think it stands up to close scrutiny. I'm just not there yet because I haven't had a chance to explore the evidence myself. And for many of the theories that are adduced, not only by David Ray Griffin, but others, sometimes there are still more questions that come up that are unanswered. And so I can't let myself be guilty of what I accuse others of, that is cherry-picking the evidence. And so that's where I am. It's not a real comfortable position to be in. I ask people to understand that. I think in the next couple of months I may have a chance to have some time to read more about it and look at some of these tapes that people have given me. I just haven't had time to look at. Well, I would say this, that there's one big elephant in the living room, It's never asked about, and people don't like to put it on any video or anything like that, but it is the relationship between the United States of America and the State of Israel. It's the fly in the ointment. It's gotten us into a peck of trouble in the Middle East. It's got historical antecedents. It's all kind of, you can parse it, but this president, almost 6 years ago, reversed a constant policy over 4 decades whereby we tried to be an honest broker, where we tried to be an intermediary to try to get some rights for the Palestinians while securing the existence of Israel within secure and internationally recognized borders. He reversed that. At the very first NSC meeting, we know this because the Secretary of the Treasury, Paul O'Neill, was there, and he wrote it in his book. And what the President said is, first thing he said, okay, we know who our friends are in the Middle East. No more of this honest broker stuff. We're going to give Ariel Sharon his head. Anybody know Ariel Sharon? And Powell raised his hand. Yeah, I know him. Well, we're just going to, what do you think? And Powell says, well, I think that might be dangerous to unleash Ariel Sharon. So, well, the President says, well, sometimes a show of force can be a good thing. You know, we'll see what happens. Well, we've seen what happened, right? The last 6 years, we've seen what happened. And so he reversed that policy, and the sooner we get back to a policy where we recognize that the Palestinians also have a right to exist, as soon as our politicians can get bold enough to say, look, this is a justice issue. You can't have peace without justice. I mean, you can go back to the Bible for that, because that's biblical, right? Peace is simply the experience of justice in biblical terms. And that's true today as it was back then. So we have to do a little bit more justice, or a lot more. And once we do that, once we grapple with this very knotty problem and show that we're willing to recognize the rights of the Palestinians as well as the Israelis and not just give lip service to them, then there's some hope for a movement in the Middle East, and there's some hope that we could address the other grievances that Palestinians and other Muslims and Arabs feel against our policies, because it's not that they hate our freedom, it's not that they hate our democracy, they hate our policies. And, you know, when Don Rumsfeld said, as he did, you know, I can't figure out these people. Why would anybody strap a plastique around his belt and blow himself up just to kill other people? I don't understand that. Well, all he needs to do is look at Al Jazeera one night, okay? And what will he see? He'll see helicopter gunships, he'll see fighter bombers, he'll see tanks, he'll see bulldozers made in Peoria, all made in America, wreaking havoc on the West Bank and now again in Gaza. That's what they see. And there are 1.3 billion Muslims out there, and they're not going to let us do that much longer. And they're certainly not going to let us prevail in Iraq. So as soon as they kind of recognize that, as soon as that you realize that to defeat terrorism, okay, it's exactly the way you defeat malaria. Now, with malaria, you follow the mosquitoes back to where they breed, right? Okay. And then when you find the swamp, then you set up sharpshooters around the swamp, and you try to shoot all the mosquitoes as they leave the swamp, right? Not right, not right, okay? And so it is with terrorism. You find out what swamp breeds these grievances, and you don't try to shoot all the terrorists as they come out of the swamp. You drain the swamp. To drain the swamp of the legitimate grievances that the Arabs, the Muslims, the Palestinians feel. And once that's done, and once we show some reasonable respect and intention to do that, then we can, and only then will we have some real movement in the Middle East, and people take us seriously, that we really are a justice people.
All right, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Awesome.